Amara Coleman stood in line at Morrison's grocery, counting crumpled bills, knowing she was $4 short for her daughter's formula. And as strangers whispered their judgments about mothers who couldn't afford their children, a sharply dressed millionaire, three people behind her watched with an expression she couldn't read. But what neither of them knew was that this humiliating moment in a checkout line was about to unravel a connection so impossible, so deeply intertwined, that it would force them both to question whether some encounters are simply meant to happen. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The fluorescent lights of Morrison's grocery hummed overhead, casting their harsh glow on rows of shoppers pushing carts through the Saturday afternoon crowd. Amara Coleman stood in line 7, her heart pounding as she clutched a can of baby formula against her chest. At 29 years old, she'd learned to keep her face calm, even when panic screamed inside her mind. Her daughter Ava, barely 2 years old, squirmed in her left arm, tiny fingers grasping at her mother's worn jacket. Amara shifted Ava's weight, feeling the ache in her shoulders from the double shift she'd worked the night before. The toddler let out a soft whimper, and Amara bounced her gently, whispering reassurances that everything would be okay. But as she watched the cashier scan items for the customer ahead of her, she pulled crumpled bills from her pocket one more time. 5 singles, 3 quarters, 2 dimes. A penny that looked like it had survived a war. She counted again, her fingers trembling slightly. The formula cost $18.47. She had $14.66. The math didn't work, no matter how many times she recalculated in her head. Her chest tightened as the line moved forward, bringing her closer to a moment she'd experienced too many times before. "Next customer, please," the cashier called out, her voice flat with the exhaustion of someone who'd been standing for hours. Amara stepped forward, placing the formula can on the conveyor belt as if it were made of glass. She set Ava down on her hip, trying to arrange her daughter's jacket so she looked presentable. Ava coughed once, a harsh sound that rattled in her small chest, and Amara's heart clenched. That cough had been getting worse all week. The cashier, a middle-aged woman with graying hair pulled back in a tight bun, scanned the formula. The register beeped. "1847, she announced, her eyes already moving past Amara to the next customer. Amara swallowed hard, her mouth suddenly dry. She placed her crumpled bills on the counter, spreading them out carefully. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't have enough. I thought I did, but I'm short." The cashier's expression didn't change, but she let out a small sigh. "How much you got?" $14.66. "You're almost $4 short, honey." Amara nodded, her cheeks burning with shame. She could feel eyes on her back, the weight of judgment from strangers who knew nothing about her life. "I understand. I'll just put it back." Her voice trembled despite her best efforts to sound composed. Behind her, a woman's voice cut through the air, sharp and cold. "Some people shouldn't have kids if they can't afford them." Another voice joined in, slightly softer, but no less cutting. "That's what happens when you don't plan ahead." Amara forced herself to keep her eyes down, her fingers reaching for the formula can. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. She'd learned long ago that tears only made people more uncomfortable, more convinced they were right about you. Keep your head down. Get through this moment. That was all she had to do. 3 people back in the line stood Ethan Vance, a white man in his late 30s wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Amara's rent. His 6-year-old daughter Lily held his hand, clutching a small stuffed rabbit against her pink jacket. Ethan had been scrolling through his phone, barely paying attention to the wait, until the woman's voice had broken through his distraction. He looked up, watching the scene unfold with growing discomfort. The young black woman at the counter was trying so hard to maintain her dignity, Her shoulders squared even as her hands shook. The child in her arms coughed again, and something about that sound made Ethan's stomach twist. He'd heard that kind of cough before. His late wife had made the same sound during her illness. Lily tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, why is that lady sad?" "Shh, sweetheart," Ethan whispered, but he couldn't look away. Amara lifted the formula can, preparing to hand it back to the cashier, when Ethan found himself stepping forward. "Excuse me," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I'd like to cover the difference." Every head in the vicinity turned toward him. Amara froze, her eyes widening as she looked at the well-dressed stranger. For a moment, hope flickered across her face before pride slammed down like a steel door. "Thank you," she said carefully, her voice steady despite the emotion churning beneath the surface. "But no, I can't accept that. It's just a few dollars." Ethan pressed gently, already reaching for his wallet. "Please let me help." Amara's jaw tightened. She understood what he saw when he looked at her. A charity case, someone who needed saving. She'd spent her entire life fighting against that narrative, refusing to be reduced to her circumstances. "I appreciate the offer, but I'll manage on my own." The cashier looked between them, clearly uncomfortable with the standoff happening at her register. "Ma'am, if the gentleman wants to—" I said no. Amara's voice was sharper now, embarrassment mixing with frustration. She pulled the formula away from the counter, completely. "I'm sorry for holding up the line." She turned, Ava still balanced on her hip, and walked away from the register with her head held high. Her legs felt like they might give out beneath her, but she kept moving, weaving through the aisles toward the exit. Behind her, she could hear the murmur of voices resuming, people already moving on to their own concerns. Ethan stood there, wallet in hand, feeling like he'd somehow made everything worse. The cashier was already scanning his items, Lily looking up at him with confusion in her blue eyes. "Why didn't she want your help, Daddy?" Lily asked as they loaded groceries into their cart minutes later. Ethan struggled for an answer that a 6-year-old would understand. "Sometimes people need to feel strong, sweetheart. Sometimes help feels like something else." Outside, the early evening air had turned cold. Amara stood under a flickering streetlight near the bus stop, rocking Ava gently as the toddler's coughs grew more frequent. She glanced down at her phone. The bus was running 20 minutes late. 20 minutes of standing in the cold with a sick baby and empty hands. "It's okay, baby girl," she whispered into Ava's curly hair. "We'll figure something out. We always do." Ava whimpered, her small body warm with fever against Amara's chest. Amara closed her eyes, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill over. She'd managed to save enough for rent this month. There was a free clinic that opened on Monday morning. If she could just get Ava through the weekend, they'd be okay. They had to be okay. Back inside the store, Ethan finished loading his groceries into his Mercedes SUV. Lily buckled safely in her car seat with her stuffed rabbit. He was about to pull out of the parking lot when he patted his pocket and realized something was missing. His wallet. He must have left it at the register after the cashier handed back his credit card. "Hang on, Lily. Daddy forgot something." He jogged back into the store, retrieving his wallet from the patient cashier who'd set it aside. As he walked back out, he spotted the young woman from earlier still standing at the bus stop. The wind had picked up and she was trying to shield her daughter from the cold. Ethan hesitated. Every instinct told him to offer help again, but he remembered how his first attempt had been received. Still, watching her struggle alone in the growing darkness made something ache in his chest. He walked toward her slowly, stopping a respectful distance away. "The bus running late?" he asked, keeping his voice casual. Amara glanced over, recognizing him immediately. Her expression shifted to guarded politeness. "Yes. Should be here soon. Can I offer you a ride? No strings attached, just a ride." She shook her head, a small smile on her lips that didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you, but we're fine waiting. I appreciate the thought, though." Ethan nodded, accepting her boundary this time. "Okay. Stay warm." He turned to Estuo. "Leave." Then paused. "For what it's worth, I think you're doing an amazing job. Being a parent is hard enough without strangers making it harder." Something softened in Amara's expression for just a moment. "Thank you for saying that." He walked back to his car, where Lily was pressing her face against the window, watching the woman and child at the bus stop. As Ethan pulled out of the parking lot, Lily's question from earlier echoed in his mind. "Why didn't you help her, Daddy?" The truth was he had tried. But maybe help only mattered if it was the kind someone could actually accept. The drive home took 20 minutes through the well-lit streets of the suburbs. Ethan's house stood behind iron gates, a sprawling colonial with manicured lawns and warm lights glowing in every window. He carried Lily inside, her small arms wrapped around his neck, and passed her off to Maria, their housekeeper, who had dinner waiting. But as he moved through the evening routine, dinner, bath time, reading Lily her favorite story, his mind kept returning to the grocery store, to the woman's trembling hands and fierce pride, to that awful cough from her daughter that sounded too familiar. After Lily fell asleep, Ethan stood in his home office, staring out at the city lights below. His late wife's photo sat on the desk, her smile frozen in time from before the illness had ravaged her body. He'd had all the money in the world, access to the best doctors and treatments, but it hadn't been enough. She'd died anyway, leaving him and Lily alone. What was the point of wealth if you couldn't use it to stop suffering? But the young woman at the store had made it clear. She didn't want his money. She wanted something he couldn't give. Respect without pity. Recognition without charity. Meanwhile, across town in a small apartment with peeling paint and a leaking ceiling, Amara finally made it home. The bus had eventually arrived, and she'd carried Ava up 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken again. Inside, she mixed the last few ounces of formula powder with water, making it stretch further by adding a bit more water than recommended. Ava drank hungrily, her small body still fevered and shaking with occasional coughs. Amara held her daughter close, rocking her in the worn armchair that was one of the few pieces of furniture in their sparse living room. Above them, water dripped steadily from a stain in the ceiling into a plastic bucket, each drop marking the seconds of their struggle. "Just one more night, baby," Amara whispered, her voice breaking. "Just make it through one more night and Mama will figure something out, I promise." She rocked Ava until the toddler's breathing evened out in sleep, even as those rattling coughs continued to punctuate the quiet. Rain began to fall outside, and more leaks appeared in the ceiling, adding their rhythm to the bucket's collection. Amara closed her eyes, one hand on her daughter's back, feeling each small breath like a prayer answered. She thought about the man in the grocery store, his expensive suit and easy offer of help. People like him would never understand what it felt like to count pennies, to choose between medicine and rent, to wear pride like armor because it was the only thing poverty couldn't take from you. She didn't blame him for trying to help. She just wished he could understand why she had to say no. As the night deepened and the rain fell harder, Amara held Ava close and did what she'd done every night since her husband had died overseas before their daughter was born. She survived. One moment at a time, one breath at a time, one impossible choice at a time. That was all she knew how to do. That was all she had left. 3 days passed before fate brought them together again. Amara had managed to get Ava through the weekend using the last of their formula and a borrowed $20 from her neighbor, a grandmother who understood struggle without asking questions. Monday morning arrived with weak sunshine breaking through the clouds, and Amara reported for her shift at Sunshine Community Daycare Center. She'd worked there for 8 months as a cleaner, coming in before the children arrived to scrub floors and sanitize toys, staying late to ensure everything was perfect for the next day. It wasn't glamorous work, but it came with one precious benefit: free childcare for Ava. The director, Mrs. Patterson, had bent the rules to allow it, seeing something in Amara that reminded her of her own daughter's struggles as a single mother. Amara was mopping the hallway when she heard excited voices in the main playroom. She glanced at the schedule posted near the supply closet, and her stomach dropped. Today was the day some tech company was sponsoring a special program for the children: new books, educational tablets, and a renovation fund for the playground. The center had been buzzing about it for weeks. She'd forgotten all about it in the chaos of Ava's worsening cough and her own exhaustion from pulling double shifts. Her second job, working night shifts as a nursing assistant at Riverside Care Home, meant she usually survived on 3 or 4 hours of sleep, but she couldn't afford to quit either position. Together, they barely covered rent and basic necessities. Amara kept her head down, focusing on the floor in front of her mop, when she heard a voice that made her freeze. "This is a wonderful facility. My daughter Lily has been asking for more playmates, and your program seems like exactly what she needs." Ethan Vance stood in the doorway of the director's office, shaking Mrs. Patterson's hand. He looked every bit the successful businessman in his navy suit, his dark hair neatly styled, his smile warm and genuine. Lily bounced beside him, already eyeing the toy area with excitement. Mrs. Patterson beamed with pride. "We're so grateful for your company's sponsorship, Mr. Vance. The children will benefit tremendously from your generosity." Amara tried to slip down the side hallway before he noticed her, but Lily's voice rang out clear as a bell. "Daddy, look, it's the lady from the store." Ethan's head turned, his eyes finding Amara immediately. Recognition flashed across his face, followed by something that might have been concern or surprise. Amara felt her cheeks burn as she gripped the mop handle tighter. "Hello," Ethan said, his voice careful and neutral. "Hello," Amara replied, forcing herself to meet his eyes briefly before looking away. She could feel Mrs. Patterson's curious gaze moving between them. "You two know each other?" the director asked. "We've met briefly," Ethan said smoothly, not elaborating. Amara was grateful for his discretion, at least. Lily had already lost interest in the adults, spotting Ava playing with blocks in the corner of the toddler area. She rushed over with her stuffed rabbit, dropping down next to the younger girl with immediate enthusiasm. "Hi, I'm Lily. What's your name?" Ava looked up shyly, her eyes still slightly glazed with the remnants of her fever. "Ava," she whispered, "want to play with me?" Lily held out her rabbit. "This is Mr. Hoppers. He likes to build block towers." Despite her lingering illness, Ava's face lit up with a smile. Within moments, the two girls were laughing together, building a precarious tower that kept toppling over, much to their delight. Amara watched from the hallway, her heart swelling and breaking at the same time. Ava so rarely got to just be a carefree child. Most days were colored by doctor visits, medicine schedules, and her mother's constant worry. Seeing her laugh like this was a gift. "Ms. Coleman, you can take your break now," Mrs. Patterson called out. "The morning cleaning is finished and the children are occupied." Amara nodded, stashing her mop in the supply closet and heading toward the small staff break room. She'd just poured herself a cup of terrible coffee when Ethan appeared in the doorway. Her hand tightened on the mug. "I don't mean to intrude," he said quietly, holding up his hands in a gesture of peace. "I just wanted to apologize for the other day, at the store. I didn't mean to make things more difficult for you." Amara took a sip of coffee, buying herself time to gather her thoughts. "You don't need to apologize. You were being kind. I just couldn't accept it. I understand." He paused, then added, "For what it's worth, those people who said those things, they were wrong. Completely wrong." Something in his tone made Amara look up at him, really look at him. There was genuine regret in his eyes, not pity. That distinction mattered more than she could put into words. "You learn to stop hearing them," she said with a slight shrug. "After a while, their words just become noise. You shouldn't have to learn that." "Maybe not. But that's the world we live in." She gestured toward the playroom where their daughter's laughter echoed. "Though I appreciate what your company is doing here. The kids need this." Ethan followed her gaze, watching Lily and Ava play together. They really hit it off. "Ava doesn't usually warm up to people that quickly. Your daughter must have a special gift." "Lily's always been like that. Open heart, no fear." His expression softened with fatherly pride. "Sometimes I wish I could see the world the way she does." They stood in companionable silence for a moment before Amara noticed the bandage on her own wrist and quickly pulled her sleeve down to cover it, but Ethan had already seen it. "Are you hurt?" he asked, concern coloring his voice. "It's nothing, just a burn from work. My other job." "Other job?" Amara hesitated, then figured there was no point in hiding it. He'd probably find out anyway if Lily kept coming to the daycare. "I work nights at a care home, nursing assistant. Sometimes the residents need help with meals, and I got careless with hot soup." Ethan's brow furrowed. "You work here during the day and at a care home at night?" "I do what I need to do." Her tone made it clear the subject was closed. His phone buzzed and he glanced at it, his expression darkening immediately. "Excuse me for a moment." He stepped away, his voice dropping to an angry whisper as he answered. "What do you mean the funds are missing?" Amara couldn't hear the rest of the conversation, but she saw his jaw clench and his free hand curl into a fist. Whatever was happening, it wasn't good. When he returned a few minutes later, his professional mask was back in place, but tension radiated from his shoulders. "Problem?" Amara asked, surprising herself with the question. "One of my executives apparently thought company money was his personal piggy bank. Funds meant for programs like this one." He gestured around the daycare with frustration. "I have to go deal with it. But I wanted to say, if there's ever anything you need, anything at all, please don't hesitate to ask." Amara almost smiled at that, as if she would ever ask him for anything. But something about his obvious distress over stolen charity money made her reconsider her first impression of him. Maybe he actually cared about more than just writing checks to feel good about himself. "Actually," she said slowly, "there is something. The playground outside, the swings are broken, have been for months. The kids miss them. If your company could fix those, that would mean a lot." Ethan looked surprised that she'd actually requested something, even if it wasn't for herself. "Consider it done. I'll have a crew out here this week." "Thank you." He nodded and went to collect Lily, who protested loudly about having to leave her new friend. The two girls exchanged a tearful goodbye that seemed far too dramatic for having known each other less than an hour, making both parents smile despite themselves. After they left, Amara returned to her cleaning duties, but her mind kept wandering back to the strange encounter. Ethan Vance was nothing like she'd expected. He didn't treat her like she was invisible the way most wealthy people did. He actually listened when she spoke. That was rare. The rest of the week passed in her usual blur of exhaustion. Friday arrived, and Amara was surprised to see Ethan's Mercedes pull up outside the daycare. But he wasn't dropping off Lily. He stepped out wearing jeans and a t-shirt, tools in hand, and headed straight for the playground. Mrs. Patterson looked just as confused as Amara felt. "Did he say he was coming to fix the swings himself?" "He said he'd send a crew," Amara murmured, watching through the window as Ethan examined the broken swing set, testing the chains and inspecting the rusty joints. For the next 3 hours, Ethan worked on those swings. He didn't send employees or contractors. He did it himself, his expensive clothes forgotten in favor of actual labor. Amara found excuses to walk past the windows, watching him work with a growing sense of disbelief. By mid-afternoon, the swings were fixed. Ethan tested each one personally, sitting in them like an oversized child and kicking his legs to make sure they held weight properly. When the children were released for outdoor play, their shrieks of joy made all his effort worthwhile. Amara found herself walking outside, approaching him as he packed up his tools. "You didn't have to do this yourself." He looked up, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. "I know, but I wanted to. Sometimes it's important to do things with your own hands instead of just paying someone else to do them." "Well, thank you. The kids are thrilled." "Good. That's what matters." He stood, shouldering his toolbox. "How's Ava doing? She seemed a bit under the weather when we were here earlier this week." "She's managing. We have a doctor's appointment next week." Ethan nodded, and Amara could see him biting back questions he wanted to ask, but knew better than to voice. She appreciated his restraint, even as part of her wished she could tell someone just how scared she really was about Ava's worsening symptoms. As if summoned by their conversation, Ava ran over, her small arms wrapping around Amara's legs. "Mama, I swung so high." "I saw, baby. You were flying." Ethan smiled down at Ava. "You were very brave up there." Ava hid her face shyly against her mother's leg, and Amara ran her fingers through her daughter's curls affectionately. The moment felt strangely normal, like they were just two parents watching their kids play, rather than two people from completely different worlds. As Ethan left, Amara returned to her duties, but exhaustion was catching up with her. She'd barely slept in 3 days, and her body was starting to rebel. During the final cleanup after the children went home, she felt the world tilt sideways without warning. One moment she was wiping down tables. The next, her knees buckled and she grabbed the edge of a chair to keep from falling completely. Stars burst behind her eyes and her stomach churned, with nausea. "Ms. Coleman?" Mrs. Patterson's voice came from somewhere far away. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Amara managed, though she very clearly wasn't. "Just stood up too fast." "When did you last eat?" Amara tried to remember. "Yesterday morning. Maybe." Time had become a blur of work and worry, and food had seemed less important than making sure Ava had what she needed. Mrs. Patterson guided her to a chair firmly. "You sit right here while I get you some juice and crackers from the snack cabinet. I can't take the kids' food. The kids won't miss 4 crackers and a juice box. Now sit." Amara sat, hating how weak she felt, how close she'd come to collapsing completely. What would have happened if she'd fallen and hurt herself? She couldn't afford to miss work. She couldn't afford a hospital visit. She couldn't afford any deviation from the precarious balance she'd built. That night, after working her nursing shift at the care home, Amara returned to her apartment at dawn. Ava was asleep at the neighbor's place, and Amara had an hour before she needed to pick her up and get ready for another day at the daycare. She fell onto her mattress on the floor fully clothed, too tired to even remove her shoes. Sleep came immediately, but it was haunted by dreams of grocery stores where she couldn't reach the formula on the shelves, of strangers' judging eyes, and of Ava's cough echoing endlessly through empty halls. She woke with a start to her phone alarm, feeling like she'd barely closed her eyes. Across town, Ethan sat in his home office long after midnight, unable to sleep. He'd been thinking about Amara all evening, about her fierce pride and obvious exhaustion, about the way she'd nearly collapsed at the daycare when she thought no one was watching. Mrs. Patterson had mentioned it to him casually, not realizing how much it would bother him. On impulse, he opened his laptop and typed Amara Coleman into the search bar. He felt slightly guilty for looking her up, but concern overrode his hesitation. What he found made his blood run cold. A fundraiser page appeared, created 8 months ago. "Help Save Baby Ava Coleman," read the headline above a photo of Amara holding a much smaller Ava in a hospital bed. The description explained that Ava had been diagnosed with a rare genetic condition that required expensive ongoing treatment and would eventually need specialized surgery. The fundraiser goal was $50,000. It had raised $842. Ethan stared at the screen, his chest tight with emotions he couldn't quite name. That cough he'd heard. The fever. The way Amara worked herself to exhaustion. It all made terrible sense now. She wasn't just poor. She was trying to save her daughter's life with nothing but willpower and minimum wage jobs. He thought of his own late wife, of the same diagnosis that had taken her despite every advantage money could buy. The experimental treatments that had failed. The specialists who'd done their best but couldn't stop the inevitable. He'd been helpless then, drowning in wealth that meant nothing in the face of loss. But this was different. Ava was still fighting. She still had time. And Ethan had the resources to help. The question was whether Amara would let him. After their encounters, he knew she'd rather struggle alone than accept charity. Her pride was both admirable and infuriating, a wall he didn't know how to scale without insulting everything she stood for. He stared at the fundraiser page for a long time, his finger hovering over the donate button. Then he closed the laptop, knowing that whatever he decided to do, it would have to be handled carefully. Very carefully. Because the last thing he wanted to do was hurt the woman who was already carrying more than anyone should have to bear. As dawn broke over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, both Ethan and Amara faced another day in their separate worlds. Worlds that kept intersecting in ways neither of them had anticipated. The grocery store encounter had been chance. The daycare meeting had been coincidence. But what came next would be choice. And choices had consequences neither of them could yet foresee. Ethan had discovered Amara's fundraiser page, learning about Ava's rare genetic condition and the desperate need for expensive treatment. The weight of that knowledge sat heavy on his conscience as he wrestled with how to help someone who'd made it clear she didn't want his charity. 2 days after finding the fundraiser, Ethan sat across from his legal assistant, Marcus Webb, in his downtown office. The city sprawled below them through floor-to-ceiling windows, but Ethan's focus was entirely on the problem at hand. "I want to help her," Ethan said, tapping his pen against the desk. "The medical costs are manageable and the child needs treatment now." Marcus, a cautious man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair, shook his head slowly. "Mr. Vance, I understand your impulse. But unsolicited financial gifts to strangers can create legal complications. Charity can turn into a lawsuit faster than you'd think, especially when there's a pattern of rejected offers. So what am I supposed to do? Watch a child suffer when I could help? I'm saying proceed carefully, very carefully, and document everything." Ethan dismissed Marcus, frustrated but understanding the wisdom in his words. Still, he couldn't shake the image of Ava's fevered face and that terrible cough. He'd failed to save his own wife. Maybe he could save this child instead. Meanwhile, Amara's world was crumbling in ways she hadn't anticipated. She arrived home from her night shift at the care home to find a bright orange notice taped to her apartment door. Eviction notice. 30 days. Her landlord, Mr. Hendricks, claimed she was behind on rent, though Amara had paid every month on time, sometimes cobbling together the full amount from 3 different sources. She ripped the notice down quickly, glancing around to make sure none of her neighbors had seen it. Her hands shook as she unlocked her door and stepped inside, where Ava was already awake and playing with blocks on the floor. The neighbor who watched her overnight, sweet Mrs. Chen, no relation to Amara's rule about names, just an elderly woman from the building, sat on the worn couch. "Morning, dear," Mrs. Chen said warmly. "She's been an angel, as always." "Thank you so much," Amara managed, her voice tight. She paid Mrs. Chen the $5 they'd agreed on, knowing the woman charged far less than she should out of kindness. After Mrs. Chen left, Amara sank onto the floor next to Ava, pulling her daughter into her lap. "Hey, baby girl, did you have fun?" Ava nodded, her curls bouncing. "Blocks, Mama. Big tower." "I see that. It's beautiful." Amara kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of baby shampoo and innocence. How was she supposed to tell a 2-year-old that they might lose their home? She couldn't think about that right now. She had to get Ava to daycare and herself presentable for her shift. Moving on autopilot, Amara pushed through the morning routine, hiding the eviction notice in a drawer where Ava wouldn't find it. At the daycare, she forced smiles and cleaned with her usual efficiency, pretending everything was fine. Mrs. Patterson asked if she was feeling better after her near collapse, and Amara assured her it had been a one-time thing. Just low blood sugar, nothing to worry about. But everything was worth worrying about. That night, lying awake in the darkness with Ava sleeping beside her, Amara made a decision she'd been avoiding. She pulled out her phone and opened the fundraiser page she'd created months ago in desperation. $842. It might as well have been 8 cents for all the good it did. With shaking fingers, she typed an update. "Ava's condition is progressing. We need treatment soon. Any help appreciated. God bless." She hit post before she could talk herself out of it, then immediately felt sick with shame. Begging strangers on the internet. This was what her life had become. 3 days later, Ethan made his move. He'd thought it through carefully, or so he believed. He would donate anonymously to the fundraiser using a dummy corporation name. No connection to him. No way for her to refuse. The money would simply appear, and Ava would get the treatment she needed. Using one of his company's subsidiary accounts, he transferred $49,000 to the fundraiser, bringing it to just under the $50,000 goal. Enough to cover treatment, but not so much that it looked suspicious. He felt satisfied with his cleverness as he confirmed the transaction. Amara was at work when her phone started buzzing incessantly. Text notifications, email alerts. She pulled it out, confused, and her heart nearly stopped. The fundraiser page showed a massive donation from something called Clearwater Medical Foundation. $49,000. Her hands went numb. This couldn't be real. It had to be a mistake. Or worse, a scam. She'd heard stories about fake donations that disappeared once you tried to withdraw them. Panic flooded through her as she called the fundraiser platform's helpline, demanding to know if the donation was legitimate. "We're investigating, ma'am," the representative said. "Large anonymous donations can sometimes be fraudulent. We've temporarily frozen your account until we verify the source." "Frozen? But my daughter needs treatment." "It's for your protection, ma'am. We'll resolve this as quickly as possible." Amara hung up, her mind racing. Who would do this? And why? The donation had come from a medical foundation she'd never heard of. She searched the name online, finding nothing. No website, no records. Nothing. That's when the truth started to dawn on her, cold and horrifying. This wasn't random charity. Someone had done this deliberately. Someone with money to throw around, and no understanding of what it felt like to be on the receiving end. She thought of Ethan Vance and his expensive suits, his offers to help, his daughter who'd befriended Ava. Her stomach twisted with anger and humiliation. It had to be him. Who else would have known about the fundraiser? Who else would have been foolish enough to think a massive anonymous donation wouldn't raise red flags? Within an hour, Amara had traced the donation's routing information through a contact at the bank where she'd tried to get a loan months ago. The trail led back to Vance Industries. Her suspicions confirmed, rage replaced panic. She left work early, telling Mrs. Patterson she had an emergency, and took the bus downtown to the gleaming tower that housed Ethan's company. She'd never been inside a building like this, all marble and glass and the hushed sound of wealth. The security guard tried to stop her, but she pushed past with such fury that he actually stepped back. "I need to see Ethan Vance. Now. Do you have an appointment? Tell him Amara Coleman is here. Trust me, he'll see me." Something in her voice must have convinced the guard, because he made a call. Minutes later, Amara was being escorted to an elevator that required a key card to access the executive floors. Her anger built with each floor they climbed. Ethan's office was massive, with that same view of the city she'd glimpsed through the windows. He stood when she entered, his expression shifting from surprise to concern. "Amara, Why would you humiliate me like that?" Her voice shook with barely controlled rage. "Do you have any idea what you've done? I was trying to help. By making me look like a fraud. The fundraiser platform thinks it's a scam. They froze the entire account. My daughter needs treatment, and now I can't access any of it because you decided to play God." Ethan's face drained of color. "They froze it? I didn't know that would happen." "Of course you didn't know. You think money fixes everything. You think you can just throw cash at problems and make them disappear. Some of us want more than your pity. Some of us want respect." Her words hit him like physical blows. "I do respect you. That's why I tried to do it anonymously. So you wouldn't feel..." "Wouldn't feel what? Indebted? Humiliated? Like a charity case?" Amara's eyes burned with unshed tears. "You saw me at my lowest moment and decided I needed saving. But I don't need a savior. I need people to see me as a human being trying to survive, not a project to make you feel better about your wealth." Ethan stood silent, absorbing her fury. And something in his stillness made Amara pause. She saw pain flash across his face. Real, deep pain that had nothing to do with her anger. "My wife had the same condition," he said quietly. "The same rare genetic disorder that Ava has." Amara's rage faltered. "What?" "She died 3 years ago, before Lily turned 4. I had all the money in the world, access to every specialist and experimental treatment available, and it wasn't enough. I couldn't save her." His voice cracked slightly. "When I saw Ava, heard that cough, I recognized it immediately. And I thought maybe, just maybe, I could do for your daughter what I failed to do for my wife." The air between them shifted. Amara's anger didn't disappear, but it transformed into something more complicated, a mix of fury and sympathy and exhaustion. "I'm sorry about your wife, truly, but that doesn't give you the right to make decisions about my life or my daughter's care. You're absolutely right. I overstepped. I should have asked. I should have respected your boundaries." Ethan moved around his desk, maintaining a careful distance. "Let me fix this. I'll call the fundraiser platform, verify everything legally, get the account unfrozen. And then what? I'm supposed to accept your money and be grateful? No. Then we handle this properly. Officially. Not as charity, but as a loan, if that's what you prefer. We draw up legal paperwork. You pay it back on whatever terms make sense, or don't if circumstances don't allow. But everything above board, everything documented, everything on your terms." Amara studied his face, searching for condescension or pity. She found only sincerity and regret. Her shoulders sagged with exhaustion. "Why do you care so much? You don't know us." "Because I've been where you are. Different circumstances, but the same helplessness. The same rage at a world that takes the people we love and doesn't care about our suffering. If I can prevent that for someone else, then maybe my wife's death meant something." The office fell silent except for the muffled sounds of the city below. Amara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of too many sleepless nights, too many impossible choices, too much pride struggling against too much need. "Okay," she whispered finally. "Handle the paperwork. Make it legal. Make it a CHDCA loan. But I want everything in writing. Terms, conditions, repayment schedule, everything." Ethan nodded, relief evident on his face. Absolutely. I'll have my lawyers draw it up. Fair terms. No tricks. And one more thing. Stop trying to save me. If you want to help, then treat me like a partner, not a victim. Agreed. He extended his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Amara shook it. She left his office feeling drained, but also strangely lighter. The anger had burned away some of the shame she'd been carrying, and Ethan's revelation about his wife had shifted her understanding of his motives. Maybe he wasn't just a rich man playing charity games. Maybe he was a father who understood loss and wanted to prevent it. That didn't make his actions right, but it made them human. The next morning, Amara walked Ava into the children's hospital for a consultation with the specialist, whose services were finally within reach. Sunlight glinted off her worn shoes, the same ones she'd been wearing for 2 years, held together with glue and determination. But her head was high, and her daughter was getting the care she needed. That was what mattered. Ethan watched from his car in the parking lot, having followed at a distance to make sure they arrived safely. He didn't approach. She'd made her boundaries clear, and he would respect them. But seeing Ava skip beside her mother, animated despite her illness, gave him something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not for himself, but for them. Sometimes that was enough. 6 weeks passed, and Ava's transformation was remarkable. The early treatment protocols were working better than anyone had dared hope. Her cough diminished, her energy returned, and watching her play with the other children at daycare brought tears to Amara's eyes. The specialists were cautiously optimistic, using words like responding well and positive indicators. Ethan visited the hospital occasionally, always under the pretense of checking on the loan paperwork or discussing treatment updates with the financial coordinator. But really, he came to see Ava's progress. Lily had become attached to the younger girl, calling her my little sister. With such conviction that even the daycare staff had started treating them like siblings. The 2 girls were inseparable during daycare hours. Lily would wait by the door each morning for Ava to arrive, and they'd rush off together to whatever adventure they'd dreamed up. Tea parties, block cities, elaborate pretend games where they were princesses or astronauts or whatever their imaginations conjured. Amara found herself softening toward Ethan despite her best efforts to maintain professional distance. He'd kept his word about the loan. The paperwork was fair, the terms generous but not suspiciously so, and he treated her with respect rather than pity. Slowly, carefully, something like friendship began to form between them. But the world wasn't content to let them exist in peace. It started with a photograph. Ethan's company had a PR team that monitored his public appearances and social media presence. Usually this meant managing corporate announcements and charity events. But when Sarah Mitchell, a junior PR assistant, saw her boss leaving the children's hospital with an attractive black woman who wasn't a doctor or nurse, she didn't think about innocent explanations. She thought about gossip, and gossip had value. She snapped a photo on her phone, Ethan and Amara standing near his car, engaged in what looked like an intimate conversation. In reality, they'd been discussing Ava's upcoming surgery schedule, but the camera captured only 2 people standing close together, his hand briefly touching her shoulder in a gesture of support. Sarah sent the photo to her boyfriend, who worked at a local tabloid. "Your boy dating someone new?" her text read. "Looks pretty cozy." The photo was published 3 days later with the headline, "Tech Millionaire's Mystery Woman Secret Romance." The article was pure speculation. No names, no real details. But it was enough to set wheels in motion. Within 24 hours, someone had identified Amara from the daycare where Ethan's daughter attended. By the end of the week, her name was public knowledge, along with the fact that she was a single mother who cleaned for a living. The second wave of headlines was worse. Vance's new love interest, single mom half his age. The articles painted Amara as either a gold digger or a victim, depending on the publication's angle. Neither portrayal had anything to do with reality. Amara first learned about it when parents at the daycare started whispering and staring. Then Mrs. Patterson called her into the office, looking deeply uncomfortable. "Amara, I need to talk to you about something delicate." Amara's stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" "There are some photos circulating, articles, about you and Mr. Vance." Mrs. Patterson pulled up a tabloid website on her computer. "The board of directors is concerned about publicity. They feel that having you continue working here while you're involved in a scandal could affect the center's reputation." "Scandal? There's no scandal. We're not involved romantically. He's helping with my daughter's medical bills. That's all." "I believe you, dear. But perception matters to the board. I'm sorry. But they've decided to let you go, effective immediately." The words hit like a physical blow. "You're firing me? I've done nothing wrong." "I know. I fought for you, but they wouldn't budge. I can give you 2 weeks severance, but 2 weeks won't cover rent or food or anything else. And what about Ava? She needs the daycare." Mrs. Patterson's eyes filled with sympathy. "I'm so sorry. If it were up to me." But it wasn't up to her. Amara left the office in a daze, collected Ava, and went home to their apartment, where she found her landlord, Mr. Hendricks, waiting with a smug expression and a new notice. "Rent's doubling next month," he announced. "All this publicity, paparazzi might start coming around. I gotta protect the other tenants." "You can't just double my rent." "Check your lease. Month-to-month agreements allow for adjustments with 30 days' notice. Take it or leave." Amara wanted to scream. She wanted to tear the notice into pieces and throw it in his face. But Ava was watching, confused and scared by the raised voices. So Amara swallowed her rage and nodded. "I understand." Inside the apartment, she finally let the tears come. Everything was falling apart. She'd lost her job, her housing was in jeopardy, and all because she'd accepted help from someone trying to do good. The price of association with wealth was higher than she'd ever imagined. Ethan learned about the articles from his executive assistant before he'd even finished his morning coffee. His first instinct was fury, at the tabloids, at his own PR team, at the invasive nature of public attention. His second instinct was concern for Amara. He called her immediately, but she didn't answer. He tried 3 more times before leaving a message. "Amara, I just saw the articles. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. Please call me back. We'll fix this." "But how did you fix reputation damage? How did you unring a bell that had already echoed across the internet?" Ethan began investigating, pulling his security team into emergency meetings. Someone had leaked that photo. Someone in his organization. He needed to know who. The answer came faster than expected. The leak was traced to Sarah Mitchell, who cracked under questioning and admitted she'd shared the photo with her boyfriend. She was fired on the spot, but the damage was done. Ethan's lawyers were already preparing defamation lawsuits against the tabloids, but legal remedies took time. Time that Amara didn't have. Then things got worse. A knock came on Amara's door 3 days after she'd been fired. She opened it to find 2 women in professional attire with serious expressions. "Ms. Coleman? I'm Janet Pierce from Child Protective Services. We received a report about your living situation. May we come in?" Amara's blood turned to ice. "A report? What kind of report?" "An anonymous tip claiming unstable housing, potential neglect, and concerning financial relationships. We're required to investigate all reports involving minor children." This couldn't be happening. Amara let them in, her mind reeling. They looked around the apartment, noting the leaky ceiling, the minimal furniture, the worn-down everything. They asked invasive questions about her finances, her work history, her relationship with Ethan. They examined Ava, checking for signs of neglect or abuse. After an hour that felt like eternity, they left with warnings about housing code violations and instructions to follow up in 2 weeks. They didn't take Ava, but the threat hung in the air like poison. Someone was actively trying to destroy her life. Someone who knew enough details to weaponize CPS against her. Amara collapsed on the floor after they left, Ava climbing into her lap, confused and frightened. Mama crying? Mama's okay, baby, just tired. But she wasn't okay. She was breaking. All her pride, all her strength, all her determination to handle things alone. It wasn't enough. The world was crushing her, and she didn't know how to fight back. That night, Ethan received an anonymous email, short and vicious. Stop interfering, or the child goes into the system. Your choice. He stared at it, rage building in his chest. This wasn't random cruelty. This was orchestrated. Someone was targeting Amara specifically, using her vulnerability against her, and he had a sinking suspicion who? Victoria Lane, his ex-fiancée. A woman who'd never accepted their breakup, who'd been trying to worm her way back into his life for 3 years. She had the connections, the vindictiveness, and the resources to make this happen. And if he was right, things were about to get much worse before they got better. Against his lawyer's advice, Ethan decided to go public. He scheduled a press conference, drafted a statement with his communications team, and prepared to tell the truth. No more hiding. No more allowing speculation to destroy innocent lives. If transparency was the only weapon he had, then he'd use it. The press conference was scheduled for the following week. Ethan stood before cameras and reporters, his expression serious and controlled. I'm here to address recent speculation about my personal life and my relationship with Amara Coleman. The truth is simple. Ms. Coleman's daughter has a rare medical condition that requires expensive treatment. Through my foundation, I established a medical grant to help cover those costs. Our relationship is professional and philanthropic. Nothing more. He detailed the grant structure, showed legal documentation, and answered every question with patience and clarity. The media seemed satisfied initially, but then the narrative shifted again. Instead of painting it as scandal, they painted it as tragedy. Poor single mother, rich savior. The story of inequality and charity. People started praising Ethan while pitying Amara, which somehow felt worse. Donations poured into Ava's fundraiser from strangers moved by the story. Within days, it had tripled the original goal. The internet loved a redemption narrative, especially one involving a cute sick kid and a handsome millionaire. But Amara watched it all with growing bitterness. I don't need their sympathy, she told Ethan when he called to share the good news about the donations. I needed their respect. Their humanity, not their pity after the fact. I know, I'm sorry, I was trying to help. I know you were, but sometimes helping just makes things worse. That night, Amara's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You don't know who you're dealing with. Stay away from him, or you'll lose everything that matters. She stared at the message, fear crawling up her spine. Through her apartment window, she noticed a black car parked across the street. Its headlights flickered once, then went dark. Someone was watching. Someone wanted her afraid, and it was working. Amara picked up Ava, holding her close as she moved away from the window. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than tabloid gossip. Someone out there wanted to hurt her, wanted to separate her from her daughter, wanted to punish her for accepting help she desperately needed, and she had no idea how to fight an enemy she couldn't even see. Amara stared at the threatening text message glowing on her phone screen. You don't know who you're dealing with. Stay away from him, or you'll lose everything that matters. Her hands trembled as she looked out the window at the black car parked across the street, its presence a silent promise of danger. Fear gripped her throat, making it hard to breathe. She wanted to respond, to demand answers, to fight back against this faceless threat. Instead, she deleted the message with shaking fingers, as if erasing it from her phone could erase it from reality. But the car remained, a dark shadow in the streetlight's glow. Ava tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mama, scared?" Amara forced a smile, kneeling down to her daughter's level. "No, baby. Mama's fine. Let's get you ready for bed, okay?" That night, Amara barely slept. Every sound in the hallway made her jump. Every car passing outside sent her heart racing. She kept Ava close, one hand always touching her daughter as if physical contact could protect her from whatever threat lurked in the darkness. The black car appeared again 2 nights later. Amara had just returned from a job interview at a different care home, desperate to replace her lost daycare position. She stepped off the bus with Ava in her arms and immediately noticed the vehicle idling near her apartment building. When she approached, its headlights flickered once, a deliberate signal. Then the car pulled away slowly, as if making sure she understood she was being watched. Terror flooded through her. This wasn't random. Someone was following her, tracking her movements, sending a message. But who? And why? What Amara didn't know was that Ethan's security team had already noticed the surveillance. Daniel Ross, head of Vance Industries Security, had been monitoring threats against Ethan since the media scandal broke. When his team spotted the black car tailing Amara, they began their own counter-surveillance operation. "Mr. Vance, we have a situation," Daniel reported during an emergency meeting in Ethan's office. "Someone's actively stalking Ms. Coleman. Professional job, too. They're careful, but not careful enough." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Can you identify them?" "Working on it. We've got the license plate, running it now. But, sir, this level of operation, it's expensive. Someone with resources is behind this." "Victoria," Ethan said, the name bitter on his tongue. "That would be my guess. She has the money and the motive. Double the security on Amara's building. I want someone watching her apartment 24/7. And I want to know everything about that car and who's driving it." Daniel nodded and left to coordinate. Ethan stood at his window, looking out over the city, rage simmering in his chest. Victoria Lane. His ex-fiancée who couldn't accept that their relationship was over. A woman who'd spent 3 years trying to manipulate her way back into his life, and now she was threatening an innocent mother and child. It was time to end this. The next afternoon, Victoria showed up at Ethan's office unannounced. She breezed past his assistant with the confidence of someone who'd once had unrestricted access to his life. Her designer suit fit perfectly, her blonde hair styled immaculately, every inch of her screaming wealth and privilege. "Ethan, darling," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk without invitation. "I heard about your little charity case. The media's been quite unkind." Ethan's expression remained cold. "What do you want, Victoria?" "I'm just checking in, making sure you're handling things appropriately. Your involvement with that woman could seriously damage your company's reputation. The board must be concerned." "The board is fine, and my involvement is legitimate philanthropy. Not that it's any of your business." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Everything about you is my business, Ethan. We have history. I care about your well-being. We have a past. That's all. And I'd appreciate it if you'd stay out of my present." She stood, smoothing her skirt with deliberate elegance. "Just be careful. Women like her know how to exploit men like you. She sees dollar signs, nothing more. Get out, Victoria. I'm only trying to protect you from making a terrible mistake. That woman and her sick child. They're anchors that will drag you down. Cut them loose before it's too late." Ethan rose, his voice deadly quiet. "I said get out. Now. Before I have security escort you." Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the venom beneath. You'll regret choosing her over me." Then she was gone, heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Ethan immediately called Daniel. "Victoria was just here. I need to know what she's planning. Use whatever resources necessary." Meanwhile, Amara was facing her own crisis. Ava's health had taken a sudden downturn. The early treatment had been working beautifully, but now complications were arising. The doctors called it an unexpected reaction. Ava needed emergency surgery that wasn't covered under the original treatment plan. The cost, an additional $75,000. Dr. Reynolds, Ava's primary specialist, delivered the news with professional sympathy. "The surgery needs to happen within 2 weeks. Without it, the progress we've made will be lost, and her condition will deteriorate rapidly." Amara sat in the hospital consultation room, feeling the world tilt beneath her. "I don't have that kind of money. The fundraiser, the loan, it covered the first round of treatment, but this... I understand this is difficult. Let me give you some time to explore your options." Options. What options did she have? Beg strangers on the internet again? Ask Ethan for more help and sink deeper into dependence? Watch her daughter die because she couldn't afford to save her? That evening, Amara walked into Miller's pawn shop, a dingy storefront wedged between a laundromat and a convenience store. She clutched a small velvet box in her hand, her heart breaking with every step. Inside was her wedding ring, the only thing she had left from Michael, her husband who died overseas before Ava was born. The ring was simple, nothing extravagant. A thin gold band with a small diamond that had belonged to Michael's grandmother, but it represented everything: their love, their promises, the life they'd planned before war had stolen him away. Selling it felt like betraying his memory, erasing the last physical proof that he'd existed. The pawnbroker, a heavy-set man with tired eyes, examined the ring with professional detachment. "I can give you $1,200. "It's worth more than that," Amara protested weakly. "Maybe to you, but this is what I can sell it for. Take it or leave it." $1,200 wouldn't even dent the surgery cost, but it was something. It could buy time, buy formula, and rent and breathing room. Amara closed her eyes, feeling tears slip down her cheeks. "I'll take it." She left the pawn shop with cash in her pocket and a hole in her heart. Michael would have understood, she told herself. He would have wanted Ava to live no matter the cost. But understanding didn't make it hurt any less. What Amara didn't see was the man following her with a camera. Victoria's hired paparazzo had been tracking her movements, waiting for an opportunity. The pawn shop was perfect. He snapped photos of Amara leaving with tears on her face, already crafting the narrative in his mind. But Ethan's security team saw him. They'd been maintaining their watch on Amara, and they intervened immediately. Daniel Ross stepped in front of the photographer just as he was preparing to leave. "Hand over the camera," Daniel said quietly, his voice brooking no argument. "I don't know what you're talking about. Public street, buddy. I can photograph whatever I want." 2 more security personnel appeared from a nearby car. The photographer's confidence wavered. "This is harassment. No, this is a warning. Delete the photos, all of them, and tell whoever hired you that their games are over." The photographer hesitated, then grudgingly deleted the images. But the damage was already forming. He'd send a message to his contact, Victoria, that someone was protecting the woman. That would tell her everything she needed to know. The next morning, tabloid headlines exploded anyway. "Millionaire's secret mistress in pawn shop, selling his gifts." The article speculated that Amara had been pawning jewelry Ethan had given her, painting her as a gold digger who'd squeezed him for money and was now liquidating the evidence. None of it was true, but truth didn't matter in the court of public opinion. The photos showed Amara leaving the pawn shop in tears. The narrative wrote itself in the public's imagination. Ethan saw the headlines before breakfast. Fury detonated in his chest like a bomb. He knew exactly who was behind this. Victoria had crossed every line, violated every boundary, and now she was actively trying to destroy an innocent woman's life out of jealous spite. He grabbed his jacket and keys. "Cancel my morning meetings," he told his assistant. "I have something urgent to handle." 20 minutes later, Ethan stormed into Victoria's office building, a sleek high-rise in the financial district where she worked as a consultant for various tech companies. He bypassed security with the authority of someone who'd once had legitimate access, taking the elevator to the 15th floor. Victoria's assistant tried to stop him. "Mr. Vance, you can't just—" But he was already pushing through Victoria's office door, slamming that morning's newspaper on her pristine glass desk. The headline screamed its lies between them. "You've crossed the line," Ethan said, his voice dangerously quiet. "This ends now." Victoria barely glanced at the paper, a small smile playing at her lips. "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't control the media." "No, but you pay people who feed them stories. I know about the photographer. I know about the anonymous CPS report. I know everything, Victoria. You can't prove anything." "Can't I?" Ethan leaned forward, his hands flat on her desk. "My security team has been very thorough. Bank records showing payments to certain individuals. Phone records connecting you to the tabloid that published this garbage. Emails discussing Amara specifically. Want me to continue?" For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Victoria's face. "You're bluffing." "Try me. I have enough evidence to bury you legally and professionally. Harassment, stalking, defamation, filing false reports with government agencies. You'll spend years in court and lose everything." Victoria stood, her composure cracking. "You're choosing her over me? That poor, pathetic woman with her sick kid? I could have given you everything." "She doesn't take from me, Victoria. She never asked for anything. You, on the other hand, have done nothing but try to control and manipulate me for 3 years. I'm done. We're done. And if you come near Amara or her daughter again, I will destroy you." He left without waiting for a response, adrenaline pumping through his veins. Outside, he called his legal team. "File everything. Every piece of evidence we have against Victoria Lane. I want charges pressed within 24 hours. The legal machine moved swiftly once Ethan unleashed it. By that evening, Victoria Lane received notice of multiple lawsuits: defamation, harassment, conspiracy to commit fraud through the false CPS report. Ethan's lawyers had built an airtight case using evidence collected over weeks of investigation. But lawsuits took time, and time was something Amara didn't have. She'd withdrawn from public life almost completely after the pawn shop headlines, refusing to answer calls or messages. Even Ethan's attempts to reach her went unanswered. She'd retreated into survival mode, taking double shifts at the new care home she'd managed to get hired at, desperately trying to cobble together money for Ava's surgery. At the daycare center, Lily noticed Ava's absence immediately. "Where's Ava?" she asked her father every morning. "Why doesn't she come play anymore?" Ethan's heart ached with each question. "She's taking a break, sweetheart. She'll be back soon. But I miss her. She's my little sister." Those words sparked an idea. Lily had been asking to do something special for Ava for weeks. What if they could use that innocent love to cut through all the adult complications and media noise? "Lily, would you like to draw a picture for Ava? Something special to make her feel better?" Lily's face lit up. "Yes, I'll draw us together." That afternoon, Lily created her masterpiece, a crayon drawing of 2 families holding hands. On one side stood a stick figure labeled Daddy and a smaller one labeled Me. On the other side stood 2 figures labeled Ava and Ava's mama. Above them, in Lily's careful 6-year-old handwriting, she'd written, "We're the same. I love you." Ethan looked at the drawing, emotion swelling in his chest. Children saw the world so simply, so purely. No complications about wealth or scandal or appropriate boundaries. Just two kids who loved each other. "This is beautiful, Lily. Should we mail it to Ava?" "Yes. And can we add a letter?" Together they crafted a short message. Ethan wrote what Lily dictated. "Dear Ava, I miss you. You're my little sister forever. Love, Lily." He mailed it that evening, hoping it would reach through Amara's walls of protection and remind her that some connections were worth fighting for. 3 days later, Amara stood in her apartment, holding Lily's letter and drawing. Ava had been delighted when it arrived, carrying the picture everywhere, telling everyone my sister had sent it. Watching her daughter's joy, Amara felt something crack inside her chest. The hard shell of pride and fear and defensive anger that she'd built to survive. These people, Ethan and Lily, they weren't her enemies. They weren't using her. They genuinely cared, in their own complicated way. And maybe she'd been so focused on protecting her dignity that she'd forgotten how to accept simple kindness. She picked up her phone and for the first time in 2 weeks called Ethan back. "Amara," he answered immediately, relief evident in his obedience voice. "Are you okay?" "No," she admitted quietly, "but I received Lily's drawing, thank you." That was all her idea. She misses Ava terribly. Ava misses her too. Amara took a deep breath. "Ethan, I need to tell you something. Ava needs emergency surgery, $75,000. I've been trying to figure it out on my own, but I can't. I've tried everything. Her voice broke. "I sold my wedding ring, and it wasn't nearly enough." Silence stretched between them before Ethan spoke, his voice gentle. "Why didn't you tell me immediately?" "Because I'm tired of needing help. I'm tired of being the person who can't handle things alone. Needing help doesn't make you weak, Amara. It makes you human. Then I'm asking, officially, as your loan partner or charity case or whatever I need to be, please help me save my daughter. You never have to ask me twice when it comes to Ava's health. Consider it handled. I'll pay you back, somehow, even if it takes my whole life. We'll figure out the details later. Right now, let's focus on getting Ava healthy." But Ethan was already planning something bigger than just covering surgery costs. He'd been thinking about sustainable solutions, ways to help not just Amara, but every parent facing impossible medical choices. That evening, he called an emergency meeting with his foundation's board of directors. "I want to propose a new initiative," he announced, "a foundation specifically designed to help single parents afford critical medical care for their children. We'll call it the Ava and Lily Foundation, named after 2 little girls who reminded me why wealth should be used for good." The board members exchanged glances. "That's quite ambitious, Mr. Vance. What kind of funding are we talking about?" "I'll personally endow it with $50 million to start. And I want Amara Coleman as the community outreach coordinator. She understands these struggles in ways none of us can. She's the voice these families need." One board member cleared his throat. "Given the recent publicity, is that wise? Hiring her might seem like what? Like treating her as the qualified, experienced advocate she is. Like respecting her knowledge and perspective. That's exactly what it should seem like, because that's exactly what it is." The board approved the proposal unanimously. Ethan left the meeting energized, already planning the foundation's launch. But first, he had to convince Amara to accept not just help, but partnership. He visited the daycare board the next morning, presenting his proposal for the foundation and its mission. "I'd like to make a significant donation to this center as well," he told them, "on one condition. You rehire Amara Coleman as your community outreach coordinator. She was wrongfully terminated due to false scandals. Give her back her dignity and her job." The board members squirmed uncomfortably. They'd let Amara go under pressure, knowing it was wrong but not wanting to fight the bad publicity. "Mr. Vance, we appreciate the offer, but no buts. This is right and you know it. Amara is an asset to this center. The children love her. The parents respected her. You fired her because you were afraid of gossip. Fix it." 2 days later, Mrs. Patterson called Amara with an apology and a job offer, not as a cleaner, but as the new community outreach coordinator. The position came with better pay, regular hours, and continued childcare for Ava. Amara accepted, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in months, she felt like maybe, just maybe, things might work out. But Ethan wasn't finished. He scheduled a televised charity event to launch the foundation, and he invited Amara to attend. She was reluctant, still raw from media attention, but he promised her something important. "Trust me," he said. "This time, the narrative changes. This time, you're not a victim or a scandal. You're a partner in something meaningful." The night of the charity event, Amara stood backstage wearing a modest but elegant gown that Mrs. Patterson had helped her find at a consignment shop. Her hands shook with nerves as cameras flashed beyond the curtain and hundreds of wealthy donors mingled in the ballroom. Ethan found her in the wings. "You look beautiful, but more importantly, you look strong." "I don't feel strong, I feel terrified." "That's okay. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the right thing despite it." He offered his arm. "Ready?" Together, they walked onto the stage. The crowd quieted as Ethan approached the microphone, Amara standing beside him under the bright lights. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Ethan began. "We're here to launch something important, a foundation dedicated to helping families afford medical care for their children. But before I tell you about the foundation, I want to tell you about the woman who inspired it." He gestured to Amara, who fought the urge to run off stage. "This is Amara Coleman. A few months ago, we met in a grocery store where she couldn't afford formula for her daughter. I tried to help, and she refused. She refused because she didn't want charity. She wanted respect. She wanted to be seen as a human being facing impossible circumstances with dignity and strength." The room was silent, everyone's attention focused on his words. "I've built my career measuring success in numbers, profits, stock prices, quarterly reports. But Amara reminded me that real wealth isn't measured in bank accounts. It's measured in the courage to keep fighting for the people you love when everything seems hopeless. It's measured in the strength to ask for help when you need it, and the grace to give help when you can." He turned to face her directly. "Amara, you've shown me what true strength looks like. And I'm honored to call you not just a grant recipient, but a partner and friend." The audience erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, and Amara felt something shift inside her, the heavy weight of shame lifting, replaced by something lighter. Not pride exactly, but perhaps acceptance. She'd survived. She'd fought. And maybe that was enough. As the applause continued, Amara stepped forward to the microphone. She hadn't planned to speak, but words rose up from somewhere deep inside. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for seeing me. That's all any of us really want, to be seen as people, not problems. To be recognized for our humanity, not judged for our circumstances." The speech went viral within hours. Social media exploded with "Thusgak Respect Amara" trending worldwide. But this time, the attention felt different. People weren't pitying her or judging her. They were listening. Donations poured into the foundation from people who understood struggle, who'd faced their own impossible choices, who wanted to prevent other families from suffering the way Amara had. Behind the scenes, Ethan's legal team was making progress on Victoria. They'd uncovered her embezzlement of charity funds from years ago, money that had been earmarked for medical research, including the hospital where Ava was being treated. The evidence was damning. Altered records, offshore accounts, a trail of financial misconduct stretching back nearly a decade. 1 week after the charity event, Ethan arranged a private meeting with Victoria. She arrived looking defiant but worried, her lawyer in tow. "You could have helped," Ethan said quietly, sliding documents across the conference table. "This money you stole, some of it was supposed to go to the hospital treating Ava. You could have been part of saving lives. Instead, you chose greed and vindictiveness." Victoria's face paled as she scanned the documents. "You can't prove We already have. The authorities will receive these documents tomorrow morning. But I'm offering you one chance to do the right thing. Return the money, all of it. Confess to your crimes. Face the consequences with whatever dignity you have left. And if I don't, then I make sure every news outlet, every business associate, every person you've ever tried to impress knows exactly what you did. You'll be ruined." Victoria stared at him, hatred burning in her eyes. "I loved you." "No, you loved what I represented. There's a difference." She stood, her lawyer gathering papers frantically. "You'll regret this." "Not anymore," Ethan replied coldly. "I'm done letting you poison my life and hurt innocent people." 2 days later, Victoria Lane was arrested. The news covered it extensively. Former socialite and consultant charged with embezzlement, fraud, and harassment. The evidence was overwhelming. She'd face years in court and likely prison time. When Amara heard the news, she felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Victoria had been broken by her own choices, destroyed by her inability to accept that love couldn't be forced or controlled. It was a cautionary tale about what happened when wealth and privilege were used as weapons, rather than tools for good. In the hospital waiting room where Ava was recovering from her successful surgery, Amara watched the news coverage quietly. For the first time, she saw Ethan not just as a wealthy man who'd intervened in her life, but as someone who genuinely fought for justice. He'd used his resources and influence not to control her, but to protect her. There was a difference, she realized, a crucial difference. The surgery had gone better than anyone hoped. Ava was responding beautifully, her small body finally getting the help it needed. The doctors were optimistic, cautiously, professionally optimistic in the way doctors were. But their hope was real. As Amara sat there, exhausted and grateful and overwhelmed, she understood something fundamental. Accepting help hadn't diminished her. It hadn't made her less capable or less worthy. It had simply made her human, connected to other humans in the messy, complicated, beautiful way that people were meant to be connected. She pulled out her phone and texted Ethan, "Thank you for everything, for seeing me, for fighting when I couldn't, for reminding me that asking for help is its own kind of strength." His response came quickly. "You never needed reminding. You were always strong. You just needed someone to stand beside you instead of trying to stand above you." Amara smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. For the first time in longer than she could remember, they were tears of relief rather than despair. The fight wasn't over. Life would always be a struggle, always require vigilance and determination. But she wasn't fighting alone anymore, and that made all the difference. Ava's recovery progressed beautifully over the following weeks. The surgery had been a complete success, and the little girl who'd once struggled with every breath now ran and played with boundless energy. Watching her daughter laugh without coughing, sprint across playgrounds without stopping to catch her breath, brought Amara to tears of gratitude almost daily. The Ava and Lily Foundation was taking shape, with Amara working alongside Ethan to develop programs that would help families facing medical crises. She'd discovered a talent for advocacy, her personal experience giving her insights that no amount of wealth or education could provide. She understood the fear, the shame, the impossible calculations parents made when deciding between rent and medicine. One afternoon, as Amara sorted through mail at her new apartment, a modest but clean two-bedroom that the foundation had helped her secure. She found an envelope that made her pause. It was addressed to Ethan Vance, but the return address listed a military unit designation she recognized immediately. Her late husband, Michael's unit. She stared at it, confused. Why would Michael's unit be sending mail to Ethan? The address was similar to hers, just one number different on the street, a simple delivery mistake. She should just forward it unopened. But curiosity and confusion overwhelmed her sense of privacy. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope. Inside was a letter thanking Ethan for his continued support of the Fallen Soldiers Family Fund, listing him as a long-time donor who'd contributed thousands of dollars over the years to help families of service members killed in action. Attached was a list of recipients from 5 years ago. Amara's breath caught in her throat. There, halfway down the page, was her own name. Amara Coleman, widow of Sergeant Michael Coleman. $5,000 received for housing assistance and medical expenses during pregnancy. She remembered that money. It had arrived anonymously through a military charity when she was 7 months pregnant with Ava, grieving Michael's death, and terrified of becoming homeless. She'd assumed it was standard military survivor benefits, never questioning the source. But it hadn't been the government. It had been Ethan. Her hands shook as she read the letter again, trying to process this revelation. Ethan had helped her years before they'd ever met. Long before the grocery store encounter, before Ava's diagnosis, before any of this, he'd been supporting military families, including hers. Their meeting hadn't been the beginning of his compassion. It had been a continuation of something he'd been doing quietly for years. She grabbed her phone and called him immediately. "Ethan, I need to see you, now." 30 minutes later, they sat in a coffee shop near the hospital, the letter spread on the table between them. Ethan stared at it, his expression shifting from confusion to shock to something that looked like wonder. "I had no idea," he said quietly. "I've donated to that fund for years, but I never knew the individual recipients. They keep it anonymous to protect families' privacy. You helped me before we ever met. You kept me and Ava alive when I was pregnant and alone and terrified." Amara's voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't know. I donate to dozens of charities. I can't track every dollar. This..." He gestured at the letter, his own hands unsteady. "This is fate, or destiny, or something I don't have words for." They sat in silence, both struggling to comprehend the impossible coincidence. Or maybe it wasn't coincidence at all. Maybe the universe had been weaving their lives together long before either of them realized it. "There's something else," Ethan said slowly, pulling out his phone. He showed her a medical research document. "Do you remember Dr. Sarah Chen?" He paused, catching himself. "Dr. Sarah Morrison at the hospital. She mentioned something about Ava's condition when we were discussing treatment options." Amara nodded, waiting. "The experimental treatment that's saving Ava's life. It's based on research funded by my wife's case. When Elizabeth was dying, I poured money into research for her condition. The trials failed to save her, but the data from those trials directly led to the treatment protocol Ava's receiving now." Amara felt the world tilt beneath her. "Your wife's illness paved the way for Ava's treatment." "Yes. Dr. Morrison explained it to me last week. Every failed treatment, every setback Elizabeth experienced, it all contributed to understanding the disease better. Without that research funded by my desperation to save my wife, the doctors wouldn't know how to help Ava." His voice broke. "Elizabeth's death meant something. It saved your daughter." Tears streamed down Amara's face. "I don't understand how this is possible. How could everything be connected like this?" "I don't know, but it is. You, me, Elizabeth, Michael, our daughters. We're all part of something bigger than random chance. Ethan reached across the table, taking her hand. Maybe this is why we met that day in the grocery store. Not coincidence. Continuation. Amara squeezed his hand, feeling the weight of impossible connections, of lives intertwined across time and tragedy and hope. "Thank you," she whispered, "for helping me when you didn't know me. For helping me when you did, for turning your grief into something that saves lives. Thank you for showing me what strength really looks like, for reminding me why any of this matters." Over the next few days, Amara couldn't stop thinking about these revelations. The threads connecting their lives seemed almost miraculous. But she also understood something profound. Ethan's generosity hadn't started with her. He'd been quietly helping people for years, not for recognition or gratitude, but because he genuinely believed wealth should serve life. The Ava and Lily Foundation officially launched the following month. The opening ceremony was held at the same hospital where Ava had been treated, with Dr. Morrison cutting the ribbon on a new pediatric wing funded by the foundation. Media coverage was extensive, but this time the narrative was right. Not rich man saves poor woman, but community coming together to ensure no parent had to choose between their child's life and financial survival. Amara spoke at the ceremony, her voice steady and strong. "A year ago, I stood in a grocery store unable to afford formula for my daughter. I thought that moment was about poverty. But I learned it was about something deeper, about a society that measures worth in dollars instead of humanity. This foundation exists to change that, to say that every child deserves care, every parent deserves support, and every person deserves dignity regardless of their bank account." The crowd applauded, but Amara wasn't finished. "I also learned that accepting help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. We're not meant to survive alone. We're meant to hold each other up when life becomes unbearable. Ethan Vance taught me that. But more importantly, his late wife Elizabeth taught all of us, through her suffering, through the research her case enabled, through the legacy she left behind. This foundation honors her memory and my late husband Michael's service. It honors every person who struggled and everyone who's had the courage to help." After the ceremony, Amara and Ethan stood together watching construction crews work on expanding the playground at the daycare center. The same playground where Ethan had once fixed broken swings. They'd come full circle in so many ways. "I have something for you," Ethan said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Amara opened it, her breath catching. Inside was her wedding ring, the one she'd sold at the pawn shop months ago. "How did you—" "I had someone track it down, bought it back. It belongs with you." She slipped the ring onto her finger, tears blurring her vision. "You didn't have to do this. I know, but some things matter more than money. That ring represents love and loss and survival. It's part of your story. Part of Ava's story. It should stay with you." Amara threw her arms around him in a tight hug, overcome with gratitude and emotion. "Thank you. For everything. For seeing me that day in the grocery store. For fighting when I couldn't. For making something beautiful from all this pain." Ethan hugged her back, his own eyes damp. "You made it beautiful. I just helped clear the path." As the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Lily and Ava ran across the playground together, their laughter echoing in the warm evening air. Two little girls from different worlds brought together by circumstances. Neither understood, but both embraced with pure, innocent joy. "My little sister," Lily called out, grabbing Ava's hand as they climbed the slide together. Amara and Ethan watched them. Two parents who'd found unexpected friendship in the midst of crisis. Not a romance. Life wasn't always that simple. But something perhaps more enduring. Mutual respect, shared purpose, and the understanding that helping each other survive was what being human truly meant. Months turned into a year, and the Ava and Lily Foundation flourished beyond anyone's expectations. They'd helped over 300 families afford critical medical care, expanded to 4 cities, and inspired similar initiatives across the country. Amara worked tirelessly as the director of community outreach, her voice becoming a powerful advocate for medical equity and family support. One evening, Ethan called Amara with an invitation that made her nervous. "There's an awards gala next month, Women Who Inspire Change. They want to honor you. Will you come?" Amara hesitated. Public events still made her uncomfortable, memories of tabloid scandals and judgment lingering like ghosts. "I don't know if I'm ready for something like that." "You're more than ready. You've changed hundreds of lives. People need to hear your story. Not the version the media created, but the real one. Your voice matters." So Amara found herself standing backstage at a glittering ballroom, wearing an elegant navy gown that Mrs. Patterson had helped her pick out. Her hands trembled as she waited for her name to be called, surrounded by accomplished women who seemed to belong in this world of chandeliers and champagne in ways she never would. Then Ethan was introducing her, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. "Tonight, we honor a woman who showed me something I'd forgotten. That courage doesn't come from wealth or power. It comes from waking up every day to fight for the people you love, even when the world makes that fight impossibly hard." Amara Coleman lost her husband to war, nearly lost her daughter to illness, and faced poverty and judgment with a dignity that humbled everyone who witnessed it. She didn't ask for a rescue. She asked for respect. And in doing so, she taught all of us what true strength looks like. Amara walked on stage to thunderous applause, the sound washing over her like a wave. The lights were bright, the crowd enormous, but she found her voice. "A year ago, I would have run from this room. I would have seen all of you and felt like I didn't belong, but I've learned something important. Belonging isn't about wealth or status. It's about shared humanity. Every person in this room has struggled, has failed, has needed help. We're all the same in that way. I'm honored to be here, not because I'm special, but because my story is everyone's story. We all need each other. We all deserve dignity. We all matter." The standing ovation lasted several minutes. Cameras flashed. But Amara felt calm, centered in a way she'd never experienced before. She'd found her voice, and it was strong. After the event, as guests mingled over dessert and coffee, an older woman approached Amara hesitantly. She looked vaguely familiar, and then Amara recognized her. The cashier from Morrison's grocery. The woman who'd been there that first terrible day. "Ms. Coleman," the woman said quietly, her face flushed with shame. "I don't know if you remember me, but I was the cashier when you couldn't afford the formula. I've wanted to apologize for months. I was so cold, so dismissive. I treated you like you were invisible." Amara studied the woman's face, seeing genuine remorse there. She remembered that day vividly. The humiliation, the whispers, the judgment from strangers who knew nothing about her life. But she also remembered what she'd learned since then about grace and forgiveness. "I remember," Amara said gently. "But I also understand. You were tired, overworked, dealing with your own struggles. We all have moments we're not proud of. What matters is that you see it now, that you're here trying to make it right." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I see you now. I'm so sorry I didn't see you then." "It's okay. Truly, I forgive you." They embraced briefly, two women acknowledging their shared humanity across the divide of that painful moment. When they separated, both were crying and smiling at the same time. The following year marked the official opening of the first Ava and Lily Foundation, Children's Hospital Wing. The ceremony was massive, with dignitaries and donors and media coverage from national outlets. But the most important moment came when Amara cut the ribbon, Ava standing beside her. Ava, now 4 years old and healthy, looked up at her mother with huge, curious eyes. "Mama, why is everyone clapping?" Because we're helping other kids feel better, baby. Kids like you who got sick but need medicine and doctors. That's good, Mama. Everyone should feel better. Such simple wisdom from a child who'd suffered more than most adults. Amara kissed the top of her daughter's head, overwhelmed with gratitude that Ava was here, alive, healthy, asking questions instead of struggling for each breath. After the speeches and photos, Ava ran straight to Lily, who'd been waiting impatiently through all the boring grown-up stuff. The girls immediately launched into an elaborate game involving the new playground equipment and their elaborate shared imagination. Ethan approached, carrying a small wrapped gift. Ava asked me to give this to you. Amara unwrapped it carefully, finding a crayon drawing. It showed a can of milk with a heart drawn inside. At the bottom, in Ava's careful preschool handwriting, "So you don't forget where we met." Amara laughed and cried simultaneously. She remembers the grocery store. Lily told her the story. Now it's part of their mythology, how our families met because of milk and became friends forever. Is that what we are? Friends? Ethan smiled. I think we're family. Maybe not in the traditional sense, but in the ways that matter. We've fought together, survived together, built something meaningful together. That's family. Amara nodded, understanding the truth of his words. Over the past year and a half, she and Ethan had developed something rare. A partnership built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and genuine care without the complications of romance. They'd each lost spouses they'd loved deeply. Neither was looking to replace that, but they'd found something equally valuable: true friendship and collaboration. As the afternoon sun began to set, Ethan walked Amara and Ava to their car. Ava chattered about the ribbon cutting and how she got to be super important today. Lily had already given her approximately 7 hugs goodbye and made her promise to come over for a play date tomorrow. You know, Ethan said quietly as Amara buckled Ava into her car seat. When I saw you in that grocery store, I thought I was supposed to save you. But you saved me. You showed me what my wealth should be used for. You gave me purpose again, after years of just existing, so thank you. We saved each other, Amara replied. That's what people do when they actually see each other as human beings instead of problems or projects or statistics. Exactly. They said goodbye without fanfare. Just a simple wave as Amara drove away with Ava singing in the back seat. No dramatic music, no passionate declarations, just two people who'd found unexpected connection in crisis and turned it into something that would help thousands of families facing similar struggles. 5 years later, Morrison's grocery underwent renovations. When they reopened, a small bronze plaque was mounted near checkout 7. The same checkout where Amara and Ethan had first crossed paths. It read, "In memory of where kindness began, Ava and Lily Foundation, established 2024. Serving families, honoring dignity, celebrating humanity." The grocery store had partnered with the foundation to create a program where customers could anonymously pay for groceries for others in need. A simple system. A quiet kindness. No judgment. No shame. Just human beings helping each other survive. One afternoon, a young mother stood at that same checkout, counting change, realizing she was short for her baby's formula. The cashier smiled gently and said, "Don't worry. Someone already paid for it." The woman looked confused, then grateful, then overwhelmed. "Who? I need to thank them." That's the beauty of it. You don't know who helped you. You just accept it, let it give you hope, and someday when you're able, you help someone else. That's how kindness works. The young mother left with tears in her eyes and formula in her arms, not knowing that this moment was part of a legacy that had started with another desperate mother, another can of formula, and 2 strangers who'd recognized each other's humanity. Years rolled forward. Ava grew into a bright, compassionate teenager who wanted to become a doctor so she could help kids. like she'd been helped. Lily became passionate about social justice, using her privilege to advocate for equity and access. The two remained close friends, sisters in all the ways that mattered. Amara continued leading the foundation, her voice now nationally recognized in conversations about healthcare access and family support. Ethan expanded his philanthropic work, using his business success to fund dozens of initiatives. They remained close friends and colleagues, their daughters binding them together as surely as their shared mission. And sometimes, late at night when Amara couldn't sleep, she'd pull out that old crayon drawing from Ava, the milk can with the heart inside. She'd remember standing in that grocery store, humiliated and defeated, certain that moment represented everything wrong with her life. But it hadn't been an ending. It had been a beginning. The moment when two lives collided and changed trajectory, when pride and wealth both learned to bow to simple human dignity, when a chance encounter became the foundation for something beautiful. She'd learned that accepting help wasn't weakness, that needing people didn't diminish her, that true strength came not from doing everything alone, but from having the courage to reach out, to connect, to build something together that neither could create apart. In the end, it wasn't about the milk. It had never been about the milk. It was about being seen, being valued, being human. That's what they'd given each other that day in the grocery store. Recognition. And from that recognition, everything else had grown. The plaque at Morrison's grocery became something of a local landmark. People took photos there, shared the story online. The foundation's origin story spread, inspiring similar initiatives across the country and eventually around the world. Proof that one moment of genuine compassion could ripple outward infinitely, changing not just individual lives but entire communities. And so the story that began with a mother unable to afford formula ended with millions of families receiving help, thousands of children getting medical care, and countless people learning that kindness wasn't about grand gestures or unlimited resources. It was about seeing each other, really seeing each other, and choosing to help, not from pity, but from recognition of shared humanity. That was the real miracle. Not the money or the foundation or the awards, but the simple, profound act of one person seeing another person struggle and saying, "I see you. You matter. Let me stand beside you." Everything else was just details. Beautiful, important details. But the heart of it all remained that first moment of recognition in a grocery store checkout line, where true kindness began, and where it would continue, forever forward, one person at a time. When someone extends their hand to help you in your darkest moment, is refusing them an act of strength or just another form of suffering? If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories about dignity, resilience, and the unexpected ways our lives become connected.